This farm was established in around 1995. This is the basically heart and soul of the organization as far as our land is concerned. We're a national nonprofit. We're the only nonprofit in the world that's dedicated specifically to the conservation of at-risk medicinal plants. When we're talking about at-risk medicinal plants in this region, we're talking about mostly forest botanicals, so things that y'all have probably heard of, things like ginseng and goldenseal, black cohosh, bloodroot, ginger, all these plants we're going to see today. Not only the plants, but the forest itself, the whole ecosystem is somewhat at risk. What you're going to see today is pretty rare as far as the population density of a lot of these species. So this is a pretty special spot. But basically there's more and more people on the planet every day. More and more people are looking to use alternative medicines, herbs. So what we do is basically work with the herb industry as well as landowners in the region who are interested in growing some of these plants to take supply or take demand away from what's traditionally wild harvested. So things like ginseng and goldenseal in this region have been wild harvested for centuries. It's a great way for people to make a little bit of extra money, but basically the plants are dwindling. So the value of the plants keep going up, supplies keep going down. There's a real opportunity for people who own forest land to grow some of these plants and make a little bit of money. If you all want, we can wait till you get back, or if you want to throw some magazines and swag or some stickers here, you can throw them in the cars now. We're probably going to get rained on in a little bit, maybe not. But let's hit the woods so we can try to avoid getting too soaked.
Hey, by the way, 1995 is the year I bought Skatopia.
And do you remember UPS about the same time selling in? So we run an internship program here where we have interns come stay with us for 6 weeks at a time in the spring and in the fall. There's interns here right now. We've had interns come here from all over the world, as far away as Nigeria and Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Japan, all over the country. It's a deep immersion experience. So basically you live here on the farm for 6 weeks. You're working with us every day. You're taking classes on a weekly basis to learn about medicine making, plant conservation, forestry, basically anything along those lines that you want to know. It's a pretty stellar program. There's information in these journals.
What's up with the trillium? I see it on the side of the road. It takes a really long time for it to grow.
Yeah. It can live, a lot of these plants will live for over 50 years. Some of them will live, things like ginseng can actually live over 100 years. We don't often think about plants like that, but a lot of these plants are older than us.
It looks kind of like the calla lily. I thought it was real pretty. And
it is super pretty.
It's trillium, don't touch it.
And the other thing we'll talk about too is a big threat to these plants in this area is the deer. Too many deer browsing these plants all the time has really put a dent in the population of some of these species like trillium. So help me remember when we get back, y'all can grab your journals. Cool.
Do you want it?
That way it won't get soaked. You guys all have a good night?
Oh yeah. It was beautiful.
Did you class?
Today is my class. Yep, my cousin did his last night. So it was really awesome. Beautiful thing. Thanks for the
My pleasure. Yeah. We converted a lot of the horse stalls into actual dorm rooms that are housing for our interns and guests. We also Airbnb some of the facilities here. Real quick, we've had a lot of our ash trees have all died back in the last couple of years. If you don't know, we've had this insect called the emerald ash borer come through. It's killed the trees. A lot of those trees are coming down now. It's something we're going to be aware of as we're walking through the woods. If we get any big wind gusts, just be aware. I'll try to call out if we're standing under a dangerous tree. We'll try not to stand there too long. Also, we have some obstacles, little stair steps, bridges. They're going to be slippery this morning. Just watch the steps.
That was what was right there. You remember the dairy barn? That was an ash tree that was right there in the patio.
Right, I remember that.
So it's going to be a lot of just lining up single file if we can make space, and I'll try to yap at you, show you some things, answer some questions.
What's the most endangered?
You want to stay in the middle?
Right now, right here, it's hard to say. There are endangered species here, but as far as the plants we're really working directly with that are used and consumed, black cohosh is one that I have concerns about, and we'll see that plant in a little bit. Again, because the demand for these natural medicines just keeps going up as we continue to have healthcare problems and problems with pharmaceutical medicines. There's more and more demand on these plants, and it could happen, and it's happened before. If Time Magazine features a plant like black cohosh on the cover of their magazine next week, all of a sudden everybody wants to use it. and it disappears from the forest if we don't have people lined up to grow it. There's a real opportunity for folks who live in this region that have some forest land to start growing some of this stuff and kind of get ahead of the curve a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm working with landowners who now are making decent supplemental income every year off their land, growing things like ginseng and goldenseal, black cohosh. We'll talk about all of that a little bit more. I wanted to point out this understory shrub that has the green turning red berries all around us. For those of you that live around here, you may already know this plant, but if you all want to pick a leaf off of it and smell it, there's some right in front of you there. Break a twig, go, yep, that's it. This is Spicebush, Appalachian allspice. You can smell.
Oh, I know.
You got it?
Great.
Smell it, you can chew on it, you can chew on a twig. This is a very common understory shrub in this region, and basically I wanted to point it out because it's an indicator of good soils. So wherever you see this growing, you know you have decent enough soils that you could grow medicinal plants. Or what the settlers did is, as they were moving west from the East Coast, the European settlers, they would often obtain land before they ever saw it. But they would ask if it had spicebush growing on it. They knew if it had spicebush growing on it that it was fertile enough that they could do agriculture. So they proceed to get here, cut down all the trees, cut down all the spicebush, and farm. So this is a nice indicator species. It's also being used locally. We have a guy who's actually selling the twigs as skewers for like barbecuing. It imparts that spicy flavor into whatever you're cooking. These berries, when they turn red, you can take the pulp off of them and dry that pulp and also use that as an allspice substitute. So this is used culinarily. You can also make a tea out of the leaves. You can smell about what it would taste like. And the old timers would call this sweat shrub because if you drank enough of that tea, it would actually induce sweating. That's something you may be interested in doing if you have a fever, the flu, you want to sweat it out.
Good purge, good detox.
Sweat shrub. Yep.
Yeah.
Are they fast grower, slow grower?
It's a pretty quick grower. It's, you know, like I said, you can see the dominant understory plant through here is spicebush. Every forest you walk in around here isn't going to have this, but it is very common. Again, indicator of good soil. So when you see this, you can start looking under it for some of these other plants we're going to be talking about as we move on up the trail here.
I had heard that there was a lot of medicinal herbs within 60 miles of this point, more than pretty much anywhere in the world.
That's true to some extent. So
Right.
Bruce said like this area within 60 miles of here, a large population of medicinal plants. If we drew a bullseye in the heart of, say, Goldenseal and Ginseng country, it would fall right about here, right about Charleston, West Virginia. So this area has always been recognized from pre-European times through today as a hot spot. We call it the herb basket of Appalachia. It's the hot spot for a lot of these plants. That's why United Plant Savers landed here, and that's why a lot of this community has fallen here. And together with Bruce and other neighbors, we've put together over 3,000 acres of contiguous forest land that is attached to this 400-acre farm here. So pretty neat. Not an intentional community. Nobody's, you know, leading the cult, so to speak. Maybe Bruce a little bit.
But
Bruce we all do our own things. It's made up of small farms and independent families all doing their own thing. Pretty cool stuff. A lot of those folks actually who've come in and bought land in this area and settled down are past interns who came through United Plant Savers program, decided they never wanted to go home and put their roots down literally here.
Great idea.
Get out of the way. I can jump in front of you, Dudley. You never said what the trillium is. It good for medicinal reasons?
It's not really used medicinally
No?
anymore.
Okay.
It used to be,
Okay.
but now it's just kind
It's
of
a beautiful plant.
ornamental.
Yeah, beautiful plant.
Quick fun fact.
Wind leaf.
We'll scoot right up here, please, Bruce.
Well, you get lots of
Room
poison
for
oak,
everybody.
poison oak. This is all I had to
There's a
wear.
little-
Give it to me.
This is a plant I just wanted to mention because we're going to see it blooming here. I don't know that we'll see it again. We might get lucky enough to. So you all can listen and then enjoy the plant as we move up the trail here. It's this little white flower plant. This is a really common plant. Normally, you don't see much of this in the woods. This is actually normally on the edge of fields. This is known as white snakeroot. And the reason I want to point this out, it's a very common plant, but this plant is responsible for killing Abraham Lincoln's mom. Any guesses? Anybody know the story?
What is it called again?
It's called white snakeroot.
It's kind of like Queen
And
Anne's
so
lace.
before pasteurization, cows ate this plant and made the milk toxic, and there was a big problem in the last turn of the century with something called milk sickness. So if you drank the milk of a cow who had eaten this plant, you could get sick and die, and that's what happened to Abraham Lincoln's mom.
Wow.
So anyway, today, because of pasteurization, we don't really have that problem. If you drink raw milk, if that's something you do regularly, you want to make sure your dairy farmer's getting rid of this plant on his property, white snakeroot. So just a little historical
What is
fact.
it? Is it something that antibiotics could take care of if need be?
I assume today there's a lot more options than there were back
yeah,
then.
definitely.
Back then it was an epidemic. If you got milk sickness, a lot of people died from that. Yeah.
Wow.
But today you'd never even hear of it because it'd be super rare.
Didn't know
Does
if
the
that
black
was a
look like that too?
viral or-
Black snakeroot. Well, again, so snakeroot is a common name for these plants.
Yeah.
And there's going to be hundreds of plants called snakeroot. So that's really generic. That's where you get into the Latin names of a lot of these plants being really important. There's another plant right here called black snakeroot.
Yeah, I see that.
And you're not going to see it really blooming like this. It's not a showy plant. So different species.
Wow.
Spelling's on this sign. It's embarrassing. Let's scoot up just a little more. Get everybody in here. Thanks, Bruce. Bruce has the pawpaw tree. So above me here, these guys with the big oblong leaves, and then here's a nice little one right here for everybody.
That's funny.
This is our pawpaw tree. It's our only native fruit tree. A whole festival developed around this thing. It's happening next weekend up near Albany for the 22nd or 3rd year, I think. Anyway, it's our only native fruit. Like I said, it was really important to the early pioneers and settlers as a food source. They call it poor man's banana. Raise your hand if you've tried a pawpaw.
Oh.
All right. So banana custardy is kind of what they taste like. I don't see any. Do you see some?
Yes, they're good.
Oh, I see some hanging.
Oh, yeah, I can spot those in there.
Good eye. See these fruits right here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So they'll turn almost yellowish before they fall. They get really soft before they're ripe, and you don't want to eat them before that. We'll
Are they
pass
ripe
around.
How long for the? I mean, is this the time to ripen?
This is their time. In the next couple weeks, they'll start to really ripen. You can crush one of these leaves and smell it. A lot of people don't appreciate pawpaw this way, but it's got a really unique active smell. They're actually looking at the constituents in the leaves and twigs of pawpaw right now as an anti-cancer medicine, and it's being used effectively by one company as the only herbal hair lice treatment on the market.
Oh wow.
Hair lice?
Hair lice treatment, yep. So Nature's Sunshine makes a product out of the pawpaw tree.
That smells like something
Hair
else.
lice
It
effect.
does, doesn't it? It smells like a veg.
Yeah, there's some vegetable.
Another cool thing that not a lot of people know about this plant. Does anybody know who John Audubon was?
I've heard of them.
Invented the American highway system, I believe.
Nope, but close. Kinda.
That might be the guy.
John Audubon, so responsible for the Audubon Society. He was a birder. He was the guy who documented some of the first pictures of songbirds in this region. He'd paint the pictures of the birds, and he'd paint them with the terminal bud of the pawpaw twig. You look at that bud right there, you see that little, that could be his paintbrush basically.
Wow.
So broad or narrow strokes with that, and then you can just use the tip of the pawpaw twig as a little paintbrush. Pretty neat.
That's real neat.
Yeah. They say like Lewis and Clark, when they were traveling west, filled their canoes as they moved through this region down the Ohio River, would fill their canoes with pawpaws as the main food source that got them to the next place, whatever they could find next.
Now you say native. I mean, how far does it spread?
It's basically does not occur in northern Ohio. It occurs in southern Ohio and down through West Virginia, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. Kind of Appalachian heartland is the home for the pawpaw tree. And what we're walking into now is kind of a mess because of the dying and dead ash trees. You'll see a lot of the trees in the canopy here have lost their leaves or dead. And what that's done is affected what grows underneath the trees because it's allowed so much extra light in here. gone.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't come up every year, so
No.
check again.
Okay.
Check again and maybe it'll be here. Y'all saw a sign as we moved up said Hydrastis Heaven. It's where we're standing now. It isn't heaven anymore because all the trees died, the light came in, and so normally what would be standing in it mostly died back for the year. But there are some plants up over here, and I want to talk about this one for a minute so folks can get their eyes on this plant growing around here. So this is the Hydrastis canadensis, or Goldenseal, that the signs refer to. And basically we're standing in a patch that's several acres. This is one of the largest Goldenseal patches known to man, believe it or not.
Wow.
It's natural. Now Goldenseal is also known locally as yellowroot. You'll hear a lot of people talking about going out and digging yellowroot. And this is one of those plants that's been traditionally wild harvested in this area in the fall of the year for centuries. It's used primarily as an antibiotic, but it's also antifungal. So the root of this plant can be used to treat open wounds and cuts and abrasions. It'll keep infection out. Traditionally, it would be used as, if you ever heard old timers talk about taking their bitters, this is one of the primary bitter herbs that would have been used for lip ulcers, stomach ulcers, even infections in the eye. They would make a wash or a tea out of it and then put that in your eye. So really strong antifungal, antibiotic, antiseptic. It's one that's a good one to know, a good one to have in your first aid kit. And I'll show you why they call it yellow root, and if you want to taste why they call it a bitter, you can do that too. Basically, so this one's an easy plant to grow in this region. And you can sell this plant for about $30 a pound. It'd probably take about 500 of these to make a pound. Okay, but if you're growing it, you can do that pretty easily. So if we go ahead and you can see the yellow color on this root, but if I break it open, you're going to be surprised how yellow it is inside. So hence the name yellow root or goldenseal. Now I'll pass this around, you all can check it out, and if you want to taste it, just take a little tiny piece of this rootlet and you can chew on it and get a flavor for that bitterness. Of course, traditionally the native peoples would have used this also as a dye plant, right? The yellow root would be used to dye clothing or other things that yellow color. And this is really the plant that's put us on the map here in southern Ohio, the Goldenseal Sanctuary where we're standing now, because it's not only important cultural and environmentally, but this is one that's just continued to grow in popularity. More and more people want to use it. In the 90s, there was a rumor started that Goldenseal would help you pass your drug test. Anybody remember this? Yeah. Goldenseal for passing drug tests. And what happened was, as soon as that information came out, the stuff was flying off the store shelves. And it was being depleted from the wild, right? Everybody was going out to get it because the demand soared. Well, it turns out it doesn't help you pass your drug test. But those little things can really change the whole market and what direction things are going. Since then, its popularity has continued to grow, not because it helps you pass your drug test, but because it's an effective medicine for people. So people are also taking these plants like Goldenseal internally in what you'd call a tincture or an extract. Goldenseal can be used to fight the common cold or flu, just like something like echinacea you may have heard used in the same way. Goldenseal can help fight that as well. Because of its strong antifungal, antibacterial, antiseptic properties, it's an herb you don't want to take regularly or every day. If you were taking this every day, it could actually eliminate a lot of beneficial bacteria and beneficial organisms that are in your body as well. So it's a really powerful plant. You can tell if you've tasted it how powerful it is.
Yeah.
And
real bitter.
it's one that we need to be aware of, and also if you have some woodland, it's a great easy
tons
one to
of it
start
at our
growing.
place.
Do you?
Totally, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Everywhere.
Awesome. Yeah,
All
we'll
over
take
the
care of
place.
it.
Yeah, we will.
That's good.
That's my
See,
plan.
so this area, it's here. And so when you have a patch like that, you start working it, you can get to a point where you can harvest some every 2 or 3 years for $30 a pound, and basically sustain that patch forever.
Good idea.
So it's a
That's
good
what I
way.
wanna move into.
Good way for people to make a little bit extra money. It's also a great indicator plant for all these other plants we're going to talk about. So when you see Goldenseal, there's a good chance there's ginseng close by, things like black cohosh, bloodroot, ginger. Any questions about any of that? As we move down the trail here, just keep your eyes open. You'll see the Goldenseal patch kind of flow with us here. Again, a lot of it up here has died back because of the extra light.
Taking my bitters.
A higher. I'm gonna take pictures.
Good. This is the black haw tree. I wanted to point it out. We don't often think of trees as being medicine, but they often are. This one is actually a primary herb for women with fertility issues. So women who are having a hard time conceiving children can use the root bark of this plant, and almost without fail, it works. And it's been used that way for a long, long time. There's stories, the first instances of recorded biological warfare in this country took place with this plant on the slave plantations of the South.
Wow.
So what the slave owners would do is mix this root bark into the slaves' food because they wanted their women to be very fertile and reproduce so that they had more slave labor, right? So when people caught on to what was going on, the slaves would actually counteract that by mixing cotton root bark into their food, which is a natural abortifacient, causes you to fail having a baby. So they were actually, the slave owners were putting this in the food, the slaves were putting the cotton root bark in the food, and they were having a biological warfare
War on the
against
roots.
each other. Pretty interesting history. This is still used today very commonly. Any midwife in this country who's practicing midwifery would have this in her medicine bag, so to speak. This would be a main go-to herb for working with women who are trying to conceive. There's a lot of herbs that we'll see that are specific to either women or men. It's pretty interesting. A lot of these uses have developed over not just hundreds, but thousands of years. So you go all the way back to traditional Native American uses, and of course they knew what this was good for. And they knew what the blue cohosh was good for. It's just fascinating that we have to relearn all this again and again and again.
Remembering.
Anything else besides the women's fertility?
It's a beautiful ornamental tree. This is one you can, here's a little baby. This would be a good candidate that I would dig up, take out of the woods and put in my landscape, and it just gets showy, beautiful, big white blooms in the spring of the year.
Nice.
In fact, you'll see these viburnums in a lot of nurseries for sale as a landscape ornamental.
Okay.
And
like
the
the
other
name,
thing, it's
too.
easy to identify. I learned it as the TV antenna tree because if you notice the branching habit, it goes up and then it flattens out on top.
Yeah, I was
Much
wondering
like a
that.
TV antenna. And if you look at these smaller examples, as we come by here, the branching is opposite of one another. We can talk more about that in a minute, but all the stems and branches will come out exactly opposite of each other.
Wow.
That's another good indicator for this black haw. And then
Glad you're recording all this. You guys know all my notes now.
let everybody get to see that black haw. And we're lucky that this plant's still up to see today. This is one of the first plants to die back in the fall of the year. If y'all in the back can put your eye on this blueberry right here. And this is the plant. This is the plant we're looking at. It's got little blue fruits. This is blue cohosh. I just mentioned it because it's another female herb. It's another herb that's used primarily and traditionally has been used during childbirth. So lots of times you'll have a prolonged labor that's going on into 10, 12, 15 hours. The baby's not coming. A few drops of blue cohosh usually solves that problem right away. And this is another one that's probably the most commonly used midwife herb, period.
I've heard
a lot of
this
the
one
neighbors
before.
who've done home birthing here have used this personally to great results. And again, this is one that's been used in that manner for thousands of years. So it's the root of this plant that would be harvested in the fall of the year, and then that root would be extracted in alcohol. You would then strain the root off. You'd be left with an alcohol with all the properties of the blue cohosh in it, which you could then take by the dropper full to the desired dose.
No, you take this internally or use it?
This would be used internally. Yep, take it right in.
You were saying in the alcohol.
Right, then you just take it, dropper,
Tincture.
tincture. And right next to it, we'll see some more of this as we come down the line, but this is basically what it's looking like this time of year. It's starting to die back. This is American ginseng. This is the plant everybody's most interested in. And it's not pretty nondescript plant. As you come by here, you'll see it just kind of hides there.
Yeah.
It looks like everything else. Here's a young hickory tree right next to it. A lot of people might confuse those two plants. But Does a really great job of hiding itself. So as you come by here, you'll notice it laying on the ground. As we get a little further down the trail, we'll get into some bigger patches that I planted, and we can dig a few roots and check them out.
Now it grows like five leaf like that usually, doesn't it?
Yeah, the ginseng?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 leaves.
Now it's the, how long does it take it to grow?
We grow ginseng, so I work with a lot of landowners on growing what we call wild simulated ginseng, and we encourage folks to grow that crop to at least 10 years before they're harvesting it and selling it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But they get big.
Real easy tree for everybody to learn today while we're here and identify and remember the rest of your life, and then get quizzed on at the end of the day. This tree is the Shagbark Hickory. Pretty easy, right? Look at the bark. Shaggy. Shagbark Hickory. This is one of the best eating nuts in the woods. Black walnut, king nut hickory, shagbark hickory, really good eating. Squirrels love it too. Some people think that's why the tree shags its bark, to keep squirrels from getting its nuts, but it doesn't work. The squirrels are smarter than that. But what it does provide is really good habitat for bats. So a lot of bats like to get up under that bark, and that's kind of where their home is. The endangered Indiana brown bat has actually changed some policies in the forestry world where in West Virginia, if you're logging now, you're required to leave a certain number of shagbark hickories per acre as homes for the endangered brown bat, Indiana brown bat. So these trees can be an important player in the whole ecosystem, not just for the herbs and the lumber, but for the bats and the other critters too. Next to the shagbark hickory, these are yellow buckeyes. They have real platy bark. You can see what I mean by platy. And I don't see many buckeyes. Oh, there's some buckeyes out here at the tips of the branches. They look like big round walnuts right now. If you look down on the ground, you might get lucky enough to find a buckeye. Buckeyes are some of the first trees to leaf out in the spring, and they're also the first trees to lose their leaves in the fall, and that's why these look like they've lost most of their leaves already.
You have to leach the hickory nuts.
What's that?
Leach. You have to leach the hickory
Not like oak, no, you don't have to.
Okay.
That's it.
And this is the shagbark hickory nut. Once you get in there, there's another shell, and then you got to get through that shell to get to the nut. But
Squirrels love them. Huh?
squirrels love them. They make short work of them. Oh, it's probably illegal, yeah.
Well, I mean, how much toxin would that work? I mean, can you go in a cove and just start looking for a minute?
You probably could. You'd have to mash this up. I don't think you're going to drop it
Oh, it
in
has
the
to
creek
actually be
and
mashed.
affect like a mile of the creek. It's
Right,
probably very focused and small area. But it's effective, or so I've read. I've never tried it.
Right.
Anyway, the buckeyes have some toxicity, then obviously it's not a nut that we eat. But it is a nut that we sell in Columbus on game day for $1.
Yeah, really? Where about that?
Or more, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Make a necklace out of them, we get $20.
What?
Yeah, right.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, that's a nice video you can get there. You might want to have some of that.
This would be a really good idea.
I've seen some small, that's the bigger one that I've seen.
stuff I do with my wife.
Oh, yeah.
That's beautiful down
Oh,
there.
yeah. Dolly Park.
You got your eye on that already, don't
I
you?
see all of them.
Where are you from?
I'm from here.
Okay, you know it.
Yeah, I do know.
What are you guys commenting on?
Very pretty.
It is, yeah. So
What is it?
ginseng all
Yeah.
over here. So we can scoot up a little more and get these back folks into action here. All under my feet here, under these ash trees. This is American ginseng again. You saw that one big plant? I'm gonna just pick a leaf so everybody can get an idea of what I'm looking at here. So this is a little patch that we planted. So we've planted a lot of the ginseng that you'll see right up along the trail, just so we can showcase it when people come here without having to get off the trail and find the wild plants and look at all that. So this is what we would call wild simulated ginseng, and this is kind of my forte and what I've been working on for about 20 years, is working with landowners to produce ginseng that's virtually wild, that's going to sell for wild prices. When I say wild prices, In recent history, this has been trading for over $1,000 a pound. Some individual roots by themselves can sell for that much money.
Wow.
I've seen individual roots sell for $3,000 a piece. I've seen individual roots, in some rare instances, sell for $250,000 each. Okay, this is a plant that's prized by Chinese. This all goes to Hong Kong. None of the wild American ginseng or American ginseng that's coming out of the Appalachian forests is ever going to make it to your pharmacy or your health food store or packaged into your Arizona iced tea or whatever else they're putting ginseng in these days. So the stuff that you consume here domestically in your shampoos and iced teas and all that stuff is actually what we would call cultivated ginseng that's being grown under artificial shade up in Canada and Wisconsin. And it's so prone to diseases when they grow it like that that they have to spray it every week with a fungicide just to keep it alive. And they can only grow it to about 3 or 4 years old, or it'll just basically all get root rot and die. So they're raising that crop very intensively, very chemically dependent, and that's what we get to consume as medicine, right?
Oh, God.
Unfortunately, they found high levels of arsenic, lead, and mercury in a lot of those roots.
Of course, right?
So don't always, think just because it's at the health food store in a fancy bottle that it's good for you. If you go to the health food store, you're looking for ginseng, and there's one bottle for 20 and the next bottle's 80, it's probably worth your extra 60 bucks to get the $80 bottle, and that's kind of the price point difference. So the Chinese believe that this basically will do anything to fix anything. It's the ultimate panacea, or basically it can seek out what's wrong with you and fix it. So that's one of the primary uses. When I'm talking about roots that are selling individually for $3,000 or $10,000 or $250,000, those are roots that are of a certain age, have a certain shape, or certain characteristics that are treasured. They'll never be consumed. They're often hung on a wall in an office as a status symbol. If you've ever been to Chinatown or even in some other places, you may have seen ginseng roots tied down with thread on red felt, like this display piece, and that's what happens to a lot of these trophy roots. They'll just get basically made into art that's hung on a wall again as a status symbol. So whereas we might want to drive like a Hummer, in China and Hong Kong, they might just want a nice ginseng root to hang in their office. And so you get in some of these roots, and these I know we planted from seeds, so they're probably right around 10 years old. But you get into some of these old wild forests, wild populations, and you can find ginseng still today that's over 60 years old pretty regularly. And when you get into plants that are 60 to 80 years old and they have the right size and characteristics, those are the ones that really bring a lot of money. Now there's a lot of laws and regulations both on a state and federal level that govern this plant. So this is one of the only plants that has its own harvest season, its own season where you can market it. If you were to dig up one of these right now and drive over to West Virginia, that's a federal offense for transporting ginseng out of state without proper certifications and certificates. So it's one that's heavily regulated. In this country, it's the Fish and Wildlife Service who regulates it on a federal level, and then each state has a different managing agency that manages it on the local level. In Ohio, it's the Division of Wildlife. In West Virginia, it's the Division of Forestry. So basically, September 1st, we're in ginseng season now, from September 1st to the end of the season, December 31st, you can legally harvest ginseng, but it has to be what we call 3 prongs. When we look at these plants, you'll notice some of them just have 2 sets of leaves. Some of them might just have 1 single leaf. And what we would call a mature plant here has 3 sets of leaves. So this is considered a 3-prong plant, and this would be a legal plant to harvest. There's a lot of information we can share about this plant. I'll try not to go on too long, but basically this was one of the first exports out of this country. So American ginseng and sassafras were 2 of the first things that we actually shipped off to Asia from this country. And the John Jacob Astor family, who started the East India Trading Company, they shipped ginseng from Philadelphia to Hong Kong and made their first fortunes right there. That trade's been on every year since I think we just did 300 years of ginseng exports last year.
Wow.
So this is a lot of important historical significance. It's made a lot of money for the people in Appalachia particular over a long period of time. There's a story of Daniel Boone not far from here digging keelboat loads of ginseng out of Kentucky, and as he's bringing it up the Ohio River to Philadelphia, the keelboat flips right at about Point Pleasant, where he loses several tons of ginseng root in the river. And there was so much ginseng at that point in time, all he had to do was turn around, go back to Kentucky, and fill up the boat again. But it was a major loss, and another historical record of the rich history of this plant and this country. As soon as the Europeans realized that we could export it for money, basically they employed all the native peoples to go dig all the ginseng they could find. When they were setting up the town of Marietta, the surveyors are said to have spent more time digging ginseng than running their survey lines. It was kind of like a gold rush in the eastern U.S. before we discovered gold. This was green gold. And so that's continued to this day. We still export tons and tons of it. Fortunately, today, a lot of what's being exported as wild ginseng is wild simulated ginseng. So for generations now, people have been planting this in their woodlands and passing that knowledge and skill down through the generations. So you can often find even old farms around here that have patches of ginseng on them that may have been planted by a landowner 2 generations ago.
Wow.
Pretty interesting stuff. It was very common that people, when they were out in the fall digging ginseng, that they would move some plants or take the seed back to their farm and replant it there where they could keep a better eye on it. You can see too here, that's deer browse. That's probably the biggest threat to this plant now, is the deer have really developed a taste for it, especially when you start growing it, and so it's becoming a dominant plant in your forest. Once the deer get a taste for it, they'll just hammer it year after year after year after year. So a lot of growers in this region are having to actually fence or cage or otherwise keep the deer off their plants.
Now you say it doesn't sprout every year? The root doesn't
Yeah,
sprout every year?
ginseng's a mysterious plant, so part of its reproductive and survival strategy is that that same plant isn't necessarily going to come up every year. If something changes in the environment or it has a bad year, so if a tree comes down and now this patch is getting all kinds of sun on it, plants might come up in the spring, but they're going to die back really quick, and then they might just stay down for 2, 3, 4, or 10 years before they decide conditions are right to come back up. And since you're at the esoteric conference, we can get a little esoteric here. I've worked with a lot of ginseng growers, and a lot of folks don't have any ginseng on their land, right? They've owned the land for 20 years, they know there's no ginseng there, they've looked for it, it's not there. They plant ginseng seed, and the next year, all these big, mature 3 and 4 pronged old plants show up.
Oh, yeah.
They talk to each other?
So we think those plants are dormant
Right.
underground, and they won't come
Somebody
up
says,
until
"Hey, we're
they
up
know
here."
they're safe.
Yeah.
And the Chinese, if you go back even further for thousands of years, the Chinese believe that ginseng won't show itself to you unless you're worthy to see it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of folklore, and along with the mandrake, the man root
Yep.
ginseng. Again, a lot of these roots are shaped like people. The more anatomically correct they are, the more valuable the roots are. But there's a lot of folklore around that whole idea of the plant can actually move
Yeah.
and hide itself
right.
from it.
I've read
Pretty
that
interesting
before.
stuff.
How does it propagate itself?
mandrake
I mean,
It propagates itself very tenderly. It forms a little berry, red berries, that then, if left on their own, they just simply fall off the ground, and if they're lucky, they germinate and grow. It's something like 20 to 30%, if left on their own, will ever actually establish a plant.
It's small.
so you
If a
didn't say-
human grabs that and
Right.
plants it a quarter of an inch in the soil, it bumps that up to about 80% germination survival. So there's a relationship with humans going on here that may be
Yeah.
part of the evolution of this plant as well. But despite us studying this plant for 200 years, and this is fascinating too, one of the most studied plant for 200 years, we didn't know what was spreading the seed around the forest, because any of the critters that live here, if they eat the seed, they basically destroy it. If you've ever seen deer poop, there's no seeds in deer poop. Turkeys have a crop and gizzard. They destroy seed in their throat before it ever passes through. And I've had friends live trap raccoons and possums, feed them ginseng berries, try to collect it out the scat, germinate. No animal passes a viable seed. 3 years ago, a grad student at WVU had set up some motion activated cameras on the ginseng patches and discovered the same species of bird kept coming back and eating those red berries.
Holy shit.
And there's a little bird called the wood thrush. And what they discovered after further research is that the bird would fly in, eat the red berry, fly off about 30 meters was the average, and then it would regurgitate the seed while retaining the pulp. So that little songbird's actually moving the ginseng patches through the forest. But left on its own, all it has to work with is gravity and that seed
Right.
falling. These patches moving very, very slowly through time.
That berry is on there when?
Right now, we might see some today. A lot of them have already dispersed, or I've planted a lot of them as I've walked through here the last few weeks. But yeah, I mean, the growing conditions that ginseng requires are very specific too. So you're not going to find it in any woods. You're not going to go into a pine forest and find a big stand of ginseng. In fact, you're not typically going to go on a south-facing slope or a west-facing slope and find ginseng. Right now, we're standing on a north-facing hillside, and that's part of the reason we have the diversity of plants that we do here. The north and east-facing hillsides generally are more protected, less exposed to the sun, less exposed to the wind, less exposed to the weather, so it makes optimal conditions for a lot of these plants. I have been growing wild simulated ginseng for 20 years now, and last night I was digging some roots, so I brought some along for us to taste and look at. One of the fascinating things about ginseng is that every root's different. You never know what you're going to dig out of the ground, right?
Yeah,
and if they have the right shapes and characteristics, they become extra more valuable. If they have a lot of arms and branches, look like an octopus, or have the split legs and look like a man. But basically, a root like this is about 10 years old. So we're talking about not a huge product for 10 years of growth. That root right there is about 6 or 7 years old. We'll dig up a few of these, but I would love it if you guys pass these around. You can break a piece off.
Now, can't you
Take a
tell by
nibble.
the height of the plant itself about the age of the root? I mean, it gives
No,
some kind of indicator.
You really can't, because I know all of these are the same age, but we have some that are 2-pronged, some that are 3-pronged, some that are 1-pronged. Matter of the soils and where it's occurring. The only way to know for sure how old it is to start to dig it and expose that neck. If you look at the top of that root where the bud is, the neck coming off of that has a scar on it for every year that a stem came off that plant. So
Like
you
a
can
ring
count
on a
those
tree.
scars and get an idea of how old that ginseng is. Now, like I said earlier, because it doesn't come up every year, it could be a lot older than what it's indicated by those scars. But the only way to know for sure is to dig one up. So we'll pop one of these out and just see what they're looking like. I think there was that 3-prong. I'm never going to find it right there. That top I pulled off a little bit ago belonged to this.
Fresh.
Real fresh.
Now, when you're digging these old, extremely valuable roots, you're not doing it like I just did. You actually want to do it like more of an archaeological dig, because you want to keep it intact. You want to keep all those little root fibers. The more intact you can keep it, the more complete you can keep it, the more valuable that root is. When you go to sell ginseng, you can't just take it to the health food store and say, hey, I got ginseng to sell. Because it's heavily regulated, you have to take it to a licensed ginseng buyer who's licensed with the state, okay? And those guys are hardcore. They're not gonna just give you a bunch of money for your ginseng. See, there's almost a little start of a little man,
Yep.
right? No arms yet.
Right?
Jogging. That's
But you get
Running
these,
through the woods.
you never know what's going to come out of the ground. I think that's part of the thrill for people. It's like a treasure hunt, you know. You never know what you're going to get. You get some of these big roots up in New York and up into the Northeast. These roots get massive,
Yeah.
and they can be super, super valuable. That's another nice example. These dang reality TV shows that have sprung up in the last 5 or 6 years. There's been like 4 of them now, focused on ginseng. One of them takes place right in Charleston, West Virginia. A lot of bozos I know down there. It's all scripted. None of it's real, okay? People aren't really going out in the woods and finding $10,000 worth of roots in an afternoon. It's never happened and it never will, unless you're growing it.
Yeah.
But they've painted this picture that you can go out and get rich quick. So just a quick anecdotal story. The year before the first reality show hit, there were 1,500 ginseng harvesters in Ohio. We know that because when you sell your ginseng, you have to sign paperwork. And so we know how many unique signatures there were, about 1,500 ginseng harvesters in Ohio. The year after the reality show, it was over 4,000.
Wow.
Okay? The year before the reality show, it took just under 300 roots of ginseng to make a dried pound. The year after the reality show, it was almost 500 roots to make a dried pound, because idiots were going out in the woods and digging everything. I have pictures of people holding up Buckeye trees thinking they dug ginseng.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, bad. Another harvester friend of mine was out in the woods and came across 2 young guys with a bucket and rolls of toilet paper, and they were camped out in a little spot in the woods. He said, what the hell are you guys doing? We're out digging ginseng. They didn't even know where the ginseng was or what it looked like. So don't let those shows fool you. As real as
It will
reality
usually grow on their
TV,
face, isn't that right?
Watch
Yeah.
too much TV.
as real as reality TV may seem, it's all scripted, and I know a lot of those folks, and it's pretty funny when you hear their perspective on it.
I think
Um,
it shows that.
The, the film crew will actually encourage conflict and all kinds of stuff to get good TV ratings. Yep. What is real is that you can buy the seed for this plant in the fall of the year, and if you have suitable habitat, you can simply scatter that in the woods and forget about it, and you can get yourself a nice crop of ginseng. The one grower I always talk about in Tuscarawas County, about 4 counties north of here, has been planting seed every year for about 25 years. For the last 10 or so years, he's been harvesting every year, and he makes about $10,000 a year off about 4 acres in his back woodlot of ginseng. So that's nice
awesome.
supplemental income. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a really nice story of success.
Good way to use your land. Help the environment. What's the best suitable area for them to grow in?
Basically where we're standing, so I look for things like we talked about. The spicebush would be the first thing I look for. I start to see spicebush, I might look for some of the ferns and things around us. Thank you. You guys aren't eating this though. You guys
I'm
don't-
eating
yeah,
it. I ate
some.
a piece.
Oh, I
Yeah,
did.
we'll eat it.
I love it.
I'll eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
Was that grown
Share.
in the wild?
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
These?
that wild stimulate?
This is wild simulated, so
Both of them?
all
Even
of
the
them.
one you just dug out
Yep,
there?
yep. So all this was seed we just scattered. This was about 10 years ago.
Now you say scattered, so you didn't give it a start in the dirt.
I'm making it sound maybe a little too simple, but basically I take a rake and I rake back the leaf litter.
Right.
I scatter the seed and I rake the leaves back on top of it. The important thing you want to know if you're going to do this is you don't want to seed it too thick. I mentioned earlier that when you put ginseng under intense cultivation, it's really susceptible to disease. So we want to keep, actually this is a little too thick. We want about 2 plants per square foot when they're mature. So we're planting them kind of thin. The other thing a lot of people do is they buy the seed and just go out and one by one, just pluck them in the ground.
Yeah.
Go around your big trees, your big rocks, go up the hill. But back to selecting a site, you would just look for certain indicator species, Goldenseal, black cohosh, the
Okay.
ferns. Obviously ginseng would be a great indicator,
Yeah,
right?
right. There you
It
go.
requires shade.
It loves sugar maple, it loves
Okay.
poplar, it doesn't like oak or pine.
All right.
It can
that's what I was
tolerate
gonna
growing
do,
under
trees.
walnuts, which a lot of other plants can't, so that's unique. If you have a nice forest with some walnut, poplar, beech,
They got walnut.
mixed hickory, that's probably good. And I can come hike with you. And
Yeah,
we'll do
that'd
it.
be great.
But
I
the
love
gold,
that.
wherever you have Goldenseal, you can grow ginseng for sure.
Guaranteed. Yeah.
Guaranteed. Yep.
Awesome.
Any questions about this fascinating plant? Come on, think of something.
You think it cures anything?
Yeah, what are the benefits?
It's funny. I use it usually in the fall of the year, just because I'm out digging it and harvesting it. I find it useful in periods in my life where I'm really busy and super stressed. I feel like it centers me and kind of brings me back a little bit. So I'll use it on a daily this time of year, because this is usually the most stressful time of year. Chinese, of course, believe it does everything. Science has borne out that it does have some use. The red berry juice is actually being used to treat diabetes now really effectively. So herbal treatment to regulate your blood sugar. That's the berry juice out of the red berries. It's fascinating. It's kind of like the herbal Viagra. So for males over 50 in China, they believe everybody should be taking it. And it does, at least in lab rats, seem to have a effect on male libido for sure. And then also scientifically, much like Goldenseal, just being used as a stimulant for your immune system. So reducing the duration and severity of the common cold or flu. All scientifically borne out. There's some really good herbalists who say it's all sham, right? There's some that say it doesn't really do anything, but whatever you believe. And half of the thing with any of this, whether it's your herbal medicine or just life in general, is what you think, right? So if you think it's going to work, and you believe it's going to work when you take it, it's probably going to do something beneficial for you. If you believe that it's a sham, it's probably not. So the power of thoughts is probably one of the best medicines we have.
That's right.
Beyond all these plants.
Completely.
Yeah, did you get you right there, Sean?
In other words,
Yeah.
a placebo.
Placebo effect, exactly.
And no
Yep.
seabull as well.
Interesting taste.
So who tasted the ginseng and what do you think?
I loved it.
Like
I
that.
love
I
the
like
way
it.
it smells too.
So now when you harvest it here, you said
Maternity. I loved it.
Carroty, sweet.
Yeah, kind of.
It's good.
Yeah.
You say the stuff that's harvested in the States, most of it all goes overseas.
Yeah.
That's not reused here in the States
No.
by any manufacturer.
And I'll tell you why, because the American consumer is not going to pay $1,000 a pound for it. They're just not. When they go into the health food store and they have that choice of the $20 ginseng or the $80 ginseng, 90% of the people are going to go for that $20 ginseng.
Yeah.
So we don't value these plants the way, it's funny, right? Why would the Chinese value this North American native plant more than those of us who live with it? Maybe they know something we don't. This has been used in Asia for thousands of years. So before they had access to North American ginseng, there's an Asian ginseng, very similar to this plant, and that's what they used forever. That's why they're interested in this. Basically, China's been developed for a lot longer than us. All their forests have been cut down. There isn't a lot of areas where they can find wild plants like this. So the Asian ginseng is pretty much extinct in the wild. They can still grow it and cultivate it, but for wild ginseng, they're dependent on North America. And in traditional Chinese medicine, energetics are really important. So the wild ginseng is what they want because they believe the energy of the plant is strongest in the wild, because it's had to grow and compete with all these other herbs and trees and roots and rocks. And they feel like that makes the best medicine. Whereas if you put it in a tilled, fluffy little bed and you're fertilizing it every day, it doesn't make as good energetics.
Right.
So they're dependent on us now 100% to have quality medicine, and that's why these prices keep going up. China's developing a strong middle class now. More and more people can afford to use it. But the reality is, that could go away overnight. Any socio-political anything. 9/11 is a good example. Trade shut down in September of 2001. There was no ginseng exported from September 11th on. So any event like that could shut down the trade for this. And we really need to work on developing that domestic market so that the American consumer places some value on this as well. And it's not just valuable as medicine. This is the reason I love this plant so much, is because working with people to grow it, it gets people interested in their forest. And it gets them interested in their forest as a whole. Around here, it's not uncommon to have loggers come up and knock on your door and offer you 20 grand if we can go cut your trees, you know? And a lot of people will do that because they need the money. But if they can get into something like this, it gives them incentive to keep their forest together, generate a little bit of income, and gets them interested in other aspects of that. So it's got that social or cultural importance. Also the pastime, the Appalachian pastime of wild harvesting is really important cultural, social activity. Then the environmental benefits of just having this in your forest, of keeping the forest intact, are huge. And then economically, again, so it's social, economics, and environmental all in one little package here. You don't get that too much. And spiritual too, for sure.
Definitely.
For sure. So basically, it can solve all the world's problems. Just have to give it a chance.
Just gotta believe.
Just gotta believe. And it tastes good.
Yeah, it does taste really good.
Hey, and the funny thing is, we're getting to eat it like it's candy here. We're really spoiled, you know. There are folks from China who would like pay $10,000 for this experience right now, just to look at it, feel it, harvest it, and taste it. Pretty amazing. My dream is to do a dig your own ginseng farm where we could bring them down from Chinatown to do guided ginseng hunts.
Cool idea.
So, I guess some takeaways are, because some of you probably go out in the woods and try to find this stuff now. Be smart, you know, if you're digging a plant, and I showed you the neck and the age, if you start to expose that root and you see that it's just a little tiny young thing, just cover it back up and go find a bigger one. You really do want to use that rule of digging only 3-prong or bigger plants. You know, and you never want to go into a patch and just take it all.
Yeah.
You want to leave some of those most reproductive plants. So the biggest, most mature one, maybe you'll decide to leave that one. One thing I do when I'm out harvesting, and I wild harvest, if I find a patch of ginseng like this, I might harvest 1, 2, or 3 nice 3-prongs, and then I'll actually cut the tops off of everything else and cover them up with leaves so that the next person that comes along isn't going to come and dig it all. And then I know it's there next year or the year after or whenever I want to come back for it.
It won't hurt to plant to do that?
Not this time of year. It's already starting to die back.
So I can go ahead and do that?
Yeah, I'd wait till they're a little more yellow. But if you feel that risk, if somebody might get in there, go ahead and do it now. And you don't have to cut the tops. Sometimes I'll just lay them over like this.
Yeah.
Just
I see
cover
a
them
lot
up.
of them like that in the woods.
That's it.
Thieves cover this whole county every year.
What's that?
Thieves cover this whole county every year.
This whole county.
Thieves, guaranteed.
Oh, guaranteed. Every county.
Find it
all
all.
the
I mean, they go through every single plat on the whole in the whole county. People go through it to steal.
You guys hearing this?
What's
Yeah.
that?
About ginseng
I'm
bees?
just trying.
I mean,
No, I hear you.
yeah.
So I've worked with about 100 different growers in the, say, 6-county region here. All of them have had their ginseng stolen.
Yeah, that's what I thought maybe happened over there.
And I've had growers pull
so, too.
thieves out of the woods at gunpoint, and then the sheriff yells at the landowner for having the gun out.
What the hell?
So you got, no, it's true because,
Oh, I believe it.
and part of the reason is, and I'm a little empathetic, not really to thieves, but I'm empathetic because of this. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, there weren't fence lines everywhere, and Bruce could come walk on my land and I could go walk on his land, and we didn't really care. And if he needed to come gather some ginseng or firewood, it was okay. You know, it was the commons. This was all the commons. The forest was the commons. Today, you can't go on the private property, and a lot of out-of-state folks or people who aren't from around here have come in and bought up all the land, put up fences, and shut the local people out, so people don't have anywhere to go to dig their roots. Compounded with this is huge opioid epidemic, terrible drug abuse in this region, the worst economy in the state.
Yeah.
What are people supposed to do? It's so bad around here right now that most of the people out digging in May, June, July when it's illegal, you shouldn't be out doing it. It's bad for the plant, it's bad for everything. They're digging their meth. They're not digging ginseng.
Yeah, right.
They're digging money for their next fix, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And it doesn't just go on with ginseng, it's going on now with ramps and goldenseal and ginseng and all of these herbs. So it's a really good point. It's one of the biggest challenges we face.
I mean, they're everywhere.
Oh, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And at some point, you know, I can agree. You're piss poor. You're in one of the poorest counties. There's no fucking work, right? You can go out into the woods and you can make some money, and it's a great way to spend your day too, right?
Yeah.
Where are they selling it?
To the local buyers. There's a lot of local herb buyers. You have to be licensed to buy ginseng,
Right.
but you don't have to be licensed to buy anything else. So a lot of guys will even trade ginseng, goldenseal stuff. You can trade it,
Yeah,
trade it up to their
It
whatever
don't
they're
mean some
looking
of these
for.
guys don't start buying root before season too. I mean, it's dried.
They absolutely do, and you know the state watches that shit pretty close. There's usually some buyers that get busted every year for buying root out of season.
Well, it's like I could start buying 2 months ago and then just sell it.
Right, or trade it or whatever.
Yeah. So I
Now
mean,
you say out of season, what are you considering out of season?
Well, because ginseng can't legally be harvested until September 1st, any ginseng that's dug before that's illegally harvested. It's just like a deer hunting season.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
For
anything
ginseng.
before September 1st
Is illegal. And you can actually tell
You
if
can't sell
ginseng's
it or
been
buy it before September 1st?
no,
Okay.
you can't legally
can't
buy
have
it.
If that permit.
You can't legally buy it until September 15th.
Oh, really?
But you can tell if a plant's been dug in May or June, somebody brings it to me in September, I can look at it right away and tell, well, it was dug out of season.
Well, surely
Because
it's gonna be dry,
that
isn't it?
bud right
It's
there,
all dry.
that's next year's plant is already formed in that bud. But if I dug this root back in May, that bud wouldn't have been formed yet. I can tell every root that's been dug out of season because it doesn't have that bud yet. There's other ways you can tell too. When it dries down, it's not going to dry as heavy. It's going to be lighter. The buyers know right away too. They'll look at a root and they'll tell you if you grew it, if it's wild. At least they'll try to, and they'll try to haggle you with price. I mean, it's a crazy kind of system that's carried on for hundreds of years. So I said ginseng was the first exports. Most of the ginseng buyers are also fur buyers. What was the country's first currency was furs. Ginseng and furs have kind of come up through the ranks together, and still to this day, most of the ginseng traded, bought and sold, most of the licensed ginseng buyers are also trading in furs still today. Interesting. It's the only plant we hunt,
Yeah.
right? You go ginseng hunting,
Yeah. What's up
but
with that?
what else do you hunt for besides animals, right?
Yeah.
So we've kind of put animal identity or human identity onto this plant too. Yes, you hunt mushrooms. That's true. You hunt
Yeah,
mushrooms.
mushrooms, yeah.
They're mysterious too.
Nobody can come out of the woods with.
Any other questions? There was a question floating back here a while ago. You lost it too.
Can you commercially farm ginseng? I don't know. Like, can you plant it in a non-wild environment?
So, good question.
I think that was already answered.
Well, I mentioned a lot of what we get to consume is grown under artificial shade in Canada and Wisconsin. So they put up this black plastic polypropylene shade cloth. Cost about $15,000 an acre just to put the
It
shade
looks
cloth
like,
up.
kind of like a Quonset hut or something.
Kinda, yeah. Open on the sides because they want good airflow, so it's just on top.
Yeah.
And it provides the right shade, and then they grow it in these tilled, intensively cultivated beds. Not worth even thinking about, because the value you get from it's so little compared to what you have to put into it. I know people who don't have forest land, but they're growing ginseng in the back of an old cemetery, behind the old elementary school, in the median of the road. You can go find places behind your library. All these places have old woodlots. Schools and cemeteries are great. Go plant some ginseng there if you don't have your own spot. Just keep it on the DL and don't, and only dig it in season. You'll be just fine.
Keep it on the deed.
Little deer antler was just hanging in the woods, but I'm gonna pass it around so you can all look at the teeth marks on it. Basically, the squirrels and chipmunks, mice, voles, moles, everything's eating the bone and the antler to get calcium.
Yeah.
Great source of calcium for the animals.
Show that. Awesome. Thank you.
This one just hanging around.
What's that?
There's one with that other. Where's that antler at? Back there. Throw it up here in a second.
No, but where we're at right now, this was, say, 60 to 80 years ago, this was all cow pasture.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
Okay, so it's just not a wooded area.
Right, and it's changing a little bit. Yeah, but it's pretty clear understory here.
Yeah, it's really nice. That's what it's like. Looks like you've had something grazed and then.
Not for a long time. Fruits?
Yes.
Your family still dig?
I'm the only one really. I've taught myself.
Yeah.
But I do respect the plants.
I can tell. Yeah, that's good. This little plant kind of looks like a spade-shaped leaf. Everybody see this that I'm looking at? Raise your hand if you know it. Well, a couple people. This is our wild ginger. I want to point it out just because it's an awesome plant, but also because you hear wild ginger and the first thing you want to do is like take it home and cook with it. Well, this one will make you really sick. So this isn't a ginger you're going to use like you'd use the culinary ginger. You can make a tea out of it or use it in really small doses, but you don't want to try to substitute this one for your culinary ginger. This plant can also be brought out of the woods and put into the landscape, and it makes a really nice, you can see how it just kind of forms a carpet, but if you give it a little love or put it in a bed, it'll really form a nice dense bed of ground cover.
Get a bloom on it?
It'll bloom. The blooms, everybody misses the blooms on wild ginger because you have to get down. It actually blooms right here's the flower bud for next year, so you can see that flower's going to lay right on the ground. You often have to get down and kind of scrape leaves away to see it, but it's worth seeing. It's a beautiful little brown flower, and it's got a little ramp that goes down to the ground, and that's for slugs to climb up. And slugs are the main critters that pollinate the ginger.
Really? I thought they'd just eat it.
No. So we can pass this around and get a smell on that root.
So you don't want to be eating this, you're saying?
You can nibble a little piece, but you don't want to like take it home and cook dinner with it. You know what I mean? You don't want to use a bunch of it.
Oh, I like that smell.
Spicebush is.
Yeah, it smells like it might work for bugs.
That root's what smells the strongest there.
Yeah.
Ginger can be a good indicator plant for all these other plants too. So if you're looking for your place to grow ginseng or goldenseal, ginger's a decent indicator of a good site.
So now what's the use of it? Not one?
Not
Slugs?
really. Not really. Ornamental and just. So one thing I do with it, I'll chop that root up into tiny little bits, and then I'll candy that root in maple syrup. So you put it in a pan with some maple syrup, and you cook that down until that syrup gets tacky around the root. Then you've got like a little crunchy ginger nibble.
So you can eat it?
In small doses. Let me tell you a story. My friend Jeremy is an intern here. He thought he'd cook his dinner with wild ginger. And he did cook his dinner with wild ginger, and he incorporated a lot into this meal. And about 3 hours later, he started to vomit, and he spent the next 3 or 4 hours violently vomiting. So there's some toxicity, definitely some liver toxicity issues with this one.
Yeah.
You don't want to use it like food, but you can definitely get a little nibble taste of it. Make
Nibble,
a
you're
light
saying the
cup of
razor
tea.
size?
Yeah.
Consider
Yes,
razor.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wild
Wow.
ginger.
There's no health properties as far as you know?
As far as I know, there's not. There's probably.
Right here?
Yep. Wait till everybody can
I can't say I've seen that one.
appreciate it. Yeah, there's one up here too. Did you have it, Bruce? Right here. So we saw earlier back in Hydrostis Heaven, we saw the Goldenseal. There's a lot of that behind you and in front of you now. Goldenseal yellow root. This little guy's the bloodroot. And look at that leaf, it's pretty unique as far as the round lobes. Everybody can see that. I learned it as Casper the Friendly Ghost, so it might be. See? Boo?
That's
cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one good way to identify that. Bloodroot's still used commonly today. It's put into toothpaste. Look at this root. You guys can gather up here.
Oh, wow. Make it bleed.
I will make it bleed. I'm not even gonna have to dig it though, which is good.
Okay,
It's put into toothpastes as an anti-plaque additive, so it prevents plaque on your teeth. It's used very carefully by skilled professionals to remove skin cancers and skin tags and warts and moles and things on your skin. It can actually eat the flesh, human flesh, and I say by skilled practitioners who have a lot of experience because there's been cases of people who've tried to self-apply bloodroot and eaten large parts of their face away or eaten their skin away and had to go get serious treatment. So it's something you don't want to mess around with. Unfortunately, the most common use for bloodroot that I know of today is it's being incorporated into cattle feed on feedlots. So actually harvesting this herb from the wild, they dry it, chop it up, it gets mixed into cattle feed because it prevents certain parasites that affect cattle from affecting the cows. So a lot of our bloodroots go into the cow feedlots right now. And I just dug up a little piece and we're going to pass it around if you want to be careful. Try not to get the juice on your skin. Everybody's going to react differently because we're all different. But you can see why it's called bloodroot. And that root actually exudes a red juice that can also be used as traditionally used as a plant dye for dyeing whatever.
Yeah.
Red.
Wow. What, you gonna try to eat some flesh off there?
Yeah.
Oh, you just rubbed it
Figure out
right
my
on
reaction,
you.
dude. I never tried it before.
What's that?
I do it all
Try
the
see
time.
the reaction.
Never really happened to me.
Do I get a reaction?
Yeah, so what I'm hesitant to even
up.
tell you how to do it because I don't want
Yeah.
anybody to get hurt. But you would have to, mortar and pestle it, get it nice and concentrated. You'd put it very concentrated on a small spot, and you let it sit.
For a while.
And sit, yeah.
Now, once you start having a reaction to it, I mean, gosh, how long does it? I mean, if it starts eating the flesh, how do you get it off?
I'm not a trained professional.
Wow, okay.
You don't want to try that at home.
Right, don't
really,
try this at home.
So we've seen a red root, a yellow root. I've told you about a black Cohosh black root. There's a lot of diversity under the ground that we never even really think about.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
We'll see if there's a few other plants I'd like to share with you if we encounter them for different smells of these roots that come out from under the ground. There's a plant called Virginia snakeroot. We've seen the sign for it a few times. I haven't seen a population big enough. Hopefully we will. It smells just like turpentine, like if you were to open a jar of turpentine and smell it.
Yeah.
There's amazing things going on out here.
Yeah, totally.
And what they're finding now, this is good. I like esoteric groups. Science is actually bearing this out now. All the plants and trees are communicating. We've known they can communicate, right? Or at least I've had a hunch.
Yeah.
But now we know they're communicating in a lot of different ways. And if this oak tree back here starts to get sick, gets a disease, and it's starting to die, this oak tree, it doesn't even have to be an oak. It could be a maple or a poplar or whatever. This tree will start to funnel underground through the mycorrhizal fungal networks and the root networks, energy and nutrients over to this tree to help it out.
Nice.
They form these communities and they actually all communicate underground. And beyond communicating underground and funneling resources where they need them to go, the smells and the scents also play a role with certain reactions, not just between plants and plants, but plants and animals. So if a deer browses this certain kind of tree and it lets off this certain aroma, the other trees of the same species might somehow react, producing a constituent that makes their leaves taste bad for a little while. Or in some instances, maybe the leaves roll up. So there's actually science bearing this out now. A lot of the research has been done in Africa. There isn't a lot of research being done in the eastern deciduous forest, but we can assume that a lot of these same things are taking place here. And it's really fascinating. The more we learn, the less we know. And the trees and the plants are, you know, communicating much like we would in a community and sharing resources.
What is it the aspen trees?
There are aspen trees. Here we have similar...
Are those the ones that are all connected?
Yeah.
It's like the largest living organism?
Yep, out in Colorado.
Right.
And here we have big tooth aspen, the same thing. They're all connected.
All the roots are actually joined together.
Yep.
Like that. Wow.
Like how we are.
Kinda. Well,
yeah,
that's how we should
holding
be.
hands. Yeah, they're all holding hands.
We're all connected.
There you go.
Yep.
Jacob's ladder.
Yeah, the tree said
Yeah, what's Jacob's ladder?
Did you not see it?
Right here?
Yep. Wait till everybody can
I can't say I've seen that lately.
appreciate it. Yeah, there's one up here too. Did you have it, Bruce? Right here. So we saw earlier, back in Hydrostis Heaven, we saw the Goldenseal. There's a lot of that behind you and in front of you now. Goldenseal yellow root. This little guy's the bloodroot. And look at that leaf, it's pretty unique as far as the round lobes. Everybody can see that. I learned it as Casper the Friendly Ghost. So it might be. See? Boo?
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one good way to identify that. Bloodroot's still used commonly today. It's put into toothpaste. Look at this root. You guys can gather up here.
Oh, wow. Make it bleed.
I will make it bleed. I'm not even gonna have to dig it
Is it
though, which is
big?
good. It's put into toothpastes as an anti-plaque additive, so it prevents plaque on your teeth. It's used very carefully by skilled professionals to remove skin cancers and skin tags and warts and moles and things on your skin. It can actually eat the flesh, human flesh. And I say by skilled practitioners who have a lot of experience because there's been cases of people who've tried to self-apply bloodroot and eaten large parts of their face away or eaten their skin away and had to go get serious treatment. So it's something you don't want to mess around with. Unfortunately, the most common use for bloodroot that I know of today is it's being incorporated into cattle feed on feedlots. So actually harvesting this herb from the wild, they dry it, chop it up, it gets mixed into cattle feed because it prevents certain parasites that affect cattle from affecting the cows. So a lot of our bloodroots go into the cow feedlots right now. And I just dug up a little piece and we're going to pass it around if you want to. Be careful. Try not to get the juice on your skin. Everybody's going to react differently because we're all different. But you can see why it's called bloodroot. And that root actually exudes a red juice that can also be used as traditionally used as a plant dye for dyeing whatever.
Yeah.
Red.
Wow. What, you gonna try to eat some flesh off there?
Yeah.
Oh, you just rubbed it
Check out
right
my
on
reaction
you.
to it. I never tried it before.
What's that?
I do it all
Try-
the
seen the
time.
reaction.
Never really happened to me.
Do I get a reaction?
Yeah, so what
I get.
I'm hesitant to even
Yeah.
tell you how to do it because I don't want anybody to get hurt. But you would have to, mortar and pestle it, get it nice and concentrated. You'd put it very concentrated on a small spot, and you'd let it sit.
For a while.
And sit, yeah.
Now, once you start having a reaction to it, I mean, gosh, how long does it? I mean, if it starts eating the flesh, how do you
I'm not
get
a
it
trained
off?
professional.
Wow. Okay.
You don't want to try that at home.
Right. Don't
will
try this
anyway.
at home.
So we've seen a red root, a yellow root. I've told you about a black Cohosh black root. There's a lot of diversity under the ground that we never even really think about.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
We'll see if there's a few other plants I'd like to share with you if we encounter them for different smells of these roots that come out from under the ground. There's a plant called Virginia snakeroot. We've seen the sign for it a few times. I haven't seen a population big enough. Hopefully we will. It smells just like turpentine, like if you were to open a jar of turpentine and smell it. There's amazing things going on out here.
Yeah, totally.
And what they're finding now, this is good. I like esoteric groups. Science is actually bearing this out now. All the plants and trees are communicating. We've known they can communicate, right? Or at least I've had a hunch.
Yeah.
But now we know they're communicating in a lot of different ways. And if this oak tree back here starts to get sick, gets a disease, and it's starting to die, this oak tree, it doesn't even have to be an oak. It could be a maple or a poplar or whatever. This tree will start to funnel underground through the mycorrhizal fungal networks and the root networks, energy and nutrients over to this tree to help it out.
Nice.
They form these communities, and they actually all communicate underground. And beyond communicating underground and funneling resources where they need them to go, the smells and the scents also play a role with certain reactions, not just between plants and plants, but plants and animals. So if a deer browses this certain kind of tree and it lets off this certain aroma, the other trees of the same species might somehow react, producing a constituent that makes their leaves taste bad for a little while. Or in some instances, maybe the leaves roll up. So there's actually science bearing this out now. A lot of the research has been done in Africa. There isn't a lot of research being done in the eastern deciduous forest, but we can assume that a lot of these same things are taking place here. And it's really fascinating. The more we learn, the less we know. And the trees and the plants are, you know, communicating much like we would in a community and sharing resources.
What is it the aspen trees?
There are aspen trees. Here we have similar.
Are those the ones that are all connected?
Yeah.
It's like the largest living organism.
Yep. Out in Colorado.
Right.
And here we have big tooth aspen, the same thing. They're all connected.
All the
off
roots
same
are
root.
actually joined together.
Yep.
Like that. Wow.
Like how we are.
Kinda. Well,
Yeah,
that's
they're
how
all
we should
holding
be.
hands. Yeah, they're all holding hands.
We're all connected.
There you go.
Jacob's ladder.
Yeah, the tree said
Yeah, what's Jacob's ladder?
Did you not see it?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Looks like a
Okay.
ladder, right?
That's
You
some
see that?
esoteric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's Jacob's ladder.
Is that a Jacob's ladder sign right there?
Yeah.
Can you read, does it have a Latin name below it that you could try to sound out? Don't be shy. Polymaniaceae, that's the... Anyway. Sometimes the Latin names are really indicative of the common names or of the uses. So I was just curious what Jacob's ladder was, if it had a biblical reference or anything. But obviously that's the ladder that looks like Jacob's ladder.
Yeah, it looks like Jacob's ladder, totally.
Yeah.
On grounds of likeness.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there is.
Thinking about the berries.
Right.
There's one that just came off. That ginseng. Right there.
Now, per se, would you
And
just
then
take that
there's
and you would have to get the seed?
There were 2 seeds in that one.
Oh
See
my
that?
gosh, yeah.
Nice.
Now, one interesting thing we didn't talk about, we just found a berry, a ginseng berry that had 2 seeds in it. And one thing I forgot to mention was that we take these seeds right now and we plant them in the ground. They won't germinate until the spring of 2020.
What's that now?
If we're going to take these seeds and I'm going to put them in the ground right now,
Right.
about a 1/4 inch deep, they will not germinate until the spring of 2020. So they've got to sit here for the rest of this year, all of next year, and then they'll germinate in the spring of 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
When you buy seed to plant and grow, when you buy seed in the fall of the year, wild simulated seed, you want to make sure you're buying what they call stratified seed. That means it's already been put through that whole cycle the first year. So when you plant it this fall, it'll germinate next spring immediately. That way it doesn't have to sit out here and survive the turkeys and the moles and the mice and the voles and everything else, chipmunks that are trying to eat it.
And you call that
Stratified.
stratified. Okay.
Stratified seed.
Alright, I'll remember that.
You say 100% lobster.
That's what it looks like.
Nice, that's a nice one.
For sure.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. My phone's dead and I can't take a picture.
That's why you have a
Can I
brain.
feel
It's
it?
crazy how
Wanna touch
fragile
you?
Hold on,
it
he's
was.
enjoying his moment
Oh, sorry.
in the spotlight there.
Dang.
It's rigid.
Wow, it's like a tree.
I think it wouldn't have been like that last week, you know. It would have been a
Right.
little softer.
Would you eat that one?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
I don't have a lot of experience with this type of mushroom. Is anybody else familiar with the lobsters?
I've never tried them. One a year I try. New mushroom every year.
Actually doesn't smell like it'd be that delicious.
You don't want to take it with you?
No, we're gonna leave them there. Let the spores get out in the world.
It reminds me just of a mushroom. It does smell good.
Yeah, these smell great.
Think about the black cohosh. Here's the doll's eyes, the spooky little doll's eyes looking at y'all. Check them out as you move by and look at the plant and tell me without that fruit on there that you could tell the difference between that and black cohosh.
No, it looks exactly the same.
It kind of look a little elongated a little bit on the ends.
You get a feel for it.
Yeah.
You do. There are some little
Yeah.
subtle variations.
Darker in the stem.
But even those variations can be different site to site. So.
No, it only blooms for what, a month or so this time of year.
Yeah, I mean, this time of year it's easy. As long as it has that berry on it, you can distinguish it. Doll's eyes. We'll see if this will work. So this tree came down about 2 months ago. This is a red elm or slippery elm tree. I wanted to show it to you all because it's one of the most important medicines we have. And back to Brandon's question about at-risk or endangered species, this is another tree species that's certainly really at risk because if you've ever used Tayer's throat lozenges or throat coat tea made by traditional medicinals, both those products are made out of the inner bark of the slippery elm tree, which is only being sourced pretty much exclusively from the wild and only pretty much in this part of the country. Kentucky's getting hit really hard, where poachers or plant thieves will actually go onto private property, and because it's the inner bark that's being used, they strip the bark off the entire tree, which kills the tree, and then they sell that inner bark for dollars on the pound. And demand's going through the roof for this stuff. The inner bark of this tree is more nutritious than oatmeal. You can actually sustain life on just the inner bark of this tree.
Oh, wow.
So back in the day when they had a colicky baby or a baby who was unable to eat, people knew to go get the inner bark of this tree. You make a gruel, or basically a thick tea out of the inner bark and water that you can drizzle down the throat of a young child and keep the baby alive until they're well enough to eat and retain food. So this is a great survival food. There's stories about George Washington's army in Valley Forge that winter, and they used the slippery elm tree in part to help
It's that skin
stay
and
alive. It's under the skin. The problem is with this one is it's been down long enough now that I'm not sure if the bark's going to be real good or not. There it is. We get into this white layer.
You bread out of it?
No.
I've heard of making bread out of it.
Really? I'd love to hear that. Oh, that sounds awesome. I'd love to hear more about that. Yeah. You can just feel that inner bark right there. Feel how it's slimy, kind of slippery elm.
Now, what were you saying that you wanted to hear more about?
He said he's read accounts of people making bread out of it.
I heard people making bread out of roaches recently. Not long ago.
Pretty good. You can see, as we're getting into that, that's the inner bark that we're after, the real white bark. If you started to scrape it up here where it's been getting rained on and stuff, you can see this orangey, that has already gone bad. This is still good. What I'm going to do is try to cut.
Now, how much of that, how deep would they go? I mean,
I'll show you. This layer, this is the cambium layer of the tree. So it's really only that thick. That's everything. Now it's going to be thicker on an older tree and thinner on a younger tree. Does anybody have a knife on them? We start cutting that into strips. I want people to, if you're brave enough, I'd like you to chew on a piece of this. This inner bark, as you chew on it, becomes mucilaginous and coats the throat. This is the best medicine for sore throat. Opera singers used to eat this before they performed to help take care of their throats. Just a little piece is all you need. The nice thing about it is you can take these little strips of slippery elm, you can dry these out and they'll store for years. You put them in the water, make a tea, or put them in your mouth, start to chew on it. It's like chewing on a piece of dried wood, right? But right away it comes back to that mucilaginous taste and effect.
Yeah, it's
Just keep chewing it. You can swallow it. It's safe to eat. You could eat pounds of this and not get sick. You might get healthy.
It won't make you sick.
Nope. Nope, it's food.
Oh, what are those mushrooms? White ones.
Snotty in there?
He ain't trying any, I don't think.
So now the elm, is it endangered? I mean,
This elm, so besides the fact that this elm is being harvested for medicine, it's also susceptible to the Dutch elm disease, which is what wiped out a lot of our elms already. So more threatening to this than anything is the Dutch elm disease.
yeah, I've heard of that.
But between the disease and then people harvesting it for medicine, and it's not a real common tree, you're not getting to get, a whole forest of slippery elm. They're here and there, it's a slow grower. So it's one that if we don't start growing it for medicine, and it's a hard one to encourage people to grow, right? Because how old do you think this tree is before it has good medicine?
About 50.
Really, about 50. Yeah. I mean, you could probably start harvesting the inner bark at 20, but still, that's a bigger commitment than growing ginseng. So, but this is something we could do for our children now. You plant these things now and get them into a good rotation. There may be ways we can harvest the bark without killing the whole tree, selectively harvesting one side of the tree, giving it a few years to rest.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like,
Everybody get a piece of this? Is it making its way back?
Yeah, it's good. It's not bad.
Is everybody trying it, chewing it?
Yeah.
Turns into a big wad of snot in your mouth?
Yeah.
Right. And then that coats. You can make a thick tea out of this. It's fascinating. This is one of the few trees I know of that you can directly just cut into and use like this. We don't often think about trees producing herbal medicine, but the white oak bark is used medicinally. Cherry bark is used medicinally, as some of you might know from your old cough syrups, cherry bark. So there's quite a few that can be used medicinally, and this is probably the premier one.
You ever hear about the thing with dogwood sticks and dental health?
No, tell me.
Supposedly, if you just chew on dogwood sticks, it really cleans your teeth. I got one in my front yard and I tried it and it works pretty well.
There you go. That's what I always heard with Spicebush too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was some sort of tree identification book I had, and they referenced it with a slave plantation having one of the best teeth out of anyone around.
Is that right? Huh?
Yeah.
Interesting. You try chewing on the dogwood. And then the willow twigs and willow bark is where aspirin was developed from.
Yeah.
So it's out here. Slippery elm or red elm. You'll also sometimes hear people call it around here piss elm. If you cut into a fresh red elm, it does smell kind of pissy.
Real pissy.
All right, that was just a little detour.
Interesting snot.
So we're going to cross over the creek right now. This is the main hollow creek on the farm. We started on this north-facing slope. We're going to cross onto a south-facing slope. Expect to see a change in the type of plants and trees we're seeing because of that. I just wanted to mention, like, from here on, this main hollow, 70 acres, was put into conservation easement about 6 years ago. So what that means is basically a Fish and Wildlife Service. All this money was available in Meigs because of the mining that took place here back in the 40s and 50s. It was detrimental to a lot of the watersheds and the creeks, so the federal government, the state EPA, has funneled a lot of money back in for restoration efforts. We got a conservation easement on this 70 acres of forest that basically says we can never harvest timber, we can never drill for gas, we can never mine it, we can't do anything but maintain our existing trails, benches, and bridges. Even if a tree falls down, technically we're not allowed to utilize it or take it out of the forest on this 70 acres. The entirety of the rest of the farm is in a different conservation easement. It allows us to do anything we want for educational or demonstration purposes or research. but pretty much the same. It can never be developed, timbered, you know, mined or fracked or anything like that. So this almost 400 acres is protected with those two tools. Now, that's not to say 200 years from now somebody with a lot of money and connections couldn't come in and overturn some of these protections, but it's two tools we use to help protect this. The more layers of protection like that you can get on a piece of land, the better. The idea is that places like this are going to become less and less common, and it'd be nice to have a few preserved for future generations to enjoy.
National conservation area?
Maybe someday. I mean, right now it's just local.
Right, but I mean, you're saying that are they giving you grant money to keep it?
No, well, we did get some funding to put it all in conservation easement. They paid us a certain amount per acre to protect it.
Okay, so you could study the growth?
Yep, yep. That's cool. So we're gonna head up this hill and we'll be on flat ground again. We'll loop, start making our way back out of the forest as this rain's pushing in. We're gonna end at the pond and we'll be walking down through the prairie and see some plants outside of the forest momentarily.
Actually, none of them are really that bad anymore, hardly. You don't see
No,
how much
you
red
see the
water
old
anywhere.
pictures though.
Oh
It was
yeah,
just like a moonscape.
Yeah, when I was a kid, even Leading Creek was yellow, orange, you know.
Yep, yep.
Ain't really that many of them anymore.
No, and then some of the landowners here reclaimed them themselves, some of the smaller ones.
Well, you know, you're talking 60 years now.
Exactly.
About reclaimed itself.
About reclaimed itself. Did we lose anybody? Everybody make it?
Yep.
Cool. I'll just talk real quick about these beech trees. Everybody can identify these trees with the smooth gray bark around us, the American beech tree. This is another tree that's facing some disease issues moving down from the northeast where they've lost a lot of their beech already due to what's called beech bark disease. We were just talking about this farm was strip mined all above us around the outside of the farm is what we call reclaimed fields now. It's where they had the coal seam and they took all the coal out. Just starting to come back into forest now and starting to look healthy again. But the beech tree was an associative species with the passenger pigeon. The passenger pigeon was a species of bird that occurred here through about the 1920s. The last passenger pigeon died in the Cincinnati Zoo in 1943. Her name was Martha. Just a side note. Before Martha, passenger pigeons were so numerous that when they flew over the skies here, they would block out the sun for an hour or two at a time. Farmers would walk outside and start shooting their shotguns up in the sky. The passenger pigeons would fall and they'd feed those passenger pigeons to their pigs because there were just so many passenger pigeons. They actually set up canneries around here in southern Ohio for canning pigeon meat. There were plants just for canning pigeon meat because there were so many passenger pigeons. It's extinct.
They're extinct.
They're extinct.
No kidding.
Their main food source was the American beech nut. When a flock of passenger pigeons would land in a forest like this, there's historical accounts they were so heavy on the branches, whole branches of trees would start crashing down to the ground. Think about how much bird poop was going into this forest every year from the passenger pigeon. It's not here anymore. And now, 100 years later, we're starting to lose our beech trees, and I have to wonder if there's not an association there that was lost that's having an impact on the soil fertility and the overall health on the forest because we lost that species of bird. You know, it's hard to say. I think deforestation.
I mean, you couldn't shoot them all.
You couldn't shoot them all, no. I think it was habitat loss and deforestation. I mean, that's well researched. They're actually talking about, they may have already tried doing the cloning thing on the passenger pigeon. It's one of the species they're talking about trying to bring back from the past. Whether or not you agree with that is a different conversation, but there's a lot of information on the passenger pigeon readily available if anybody's interested in learning more about it. The beech trees. They're the ones everybody likes to carve their initials in.
Oh, yeah, right.
Don't do